Hey, Psychic Celluloid Signal fans, Glenn here, and we are with
Alex Vasile.
And we're interviewing her as part of our Psychic Celluloid Signals Cinematic 7 series. You can tell we haven't done this much. We are here at the Dryden Theatre, still. And first off, thank you for granting us this interview.
Thanks.
Before we get into the 7 questions, would you mind filling our viewers in a little on what your job entails?
So I am the theater manager at the Dryden of the George Eastman Museum. My job is kind of all over the place, but for the most part I am in charge of making sure all the screenings, the daily screenings, run all right. Projection, staffing, all of that kind of fun stuff. I'm also in charge of upkeeping the theater itself, making sure the posters are up to date, putting events online as the screenings are unveiled, and yeah, I mean, it's a brief overview, but
Cool.
mostly what I do.
Very neat. Question 1. What is the most recent film you've seen, and would you recommend it to our viewers?
I'll mention a film I haven't seen here, and it's a more recent film, probably the newest film I've seen, The Lure.
Yeah.
I saw it at the Little, probably like a month and a half ago, maybe a little more than that. I forget the director's name, but it's a Polish director. Came out in, I think, 15 or 16. It's in Polish. It's a musical / drama horror film. I would greatly recommend it to anyone. It's really out there. The cinematography is beautiful. It's like kind of reminded me of the color schemes of like Drive. That it takes place in the 80s in a strip club actually, and so the colors are really neon and bright, and the horror aspect to it is hilarious but also pretty freaky, so I'd recommend it for sure.
Very cool. Yeah. What drew you to film? Was there, for instance, a specific moment in your childhood that sparked your passion for the motion picture?
I would probably say my father drove me towards film. He's a major watcher of TCM. He'd come here if he could. He doesn't walk very well, but he's retired now, disabled, so all he does is watch TCM. But growing up, he just always had older films on TV, or on the TV, or what have you, and he's definitely influenced me. He also just loves history in general, so that's driven me to love older films in particular. Funny that I mentioned a newer film, but I'm more knowledgeable of, I would say, older films, like pre-70s or something like that. Even I really like the pre-code, 1920s, 30s, even before that. But yeah, my dad really drove me to that, and I would probably, I don't know if there's a particular point I can remember in time, but he's definitely influenced me in that way.
Question 3. What trends, good and bad, do you currently see proliferating in the film industry, and how do these trends affect the future of film preservation and appreciation?
I definitely feel pretty strongly about the way that film is, generically, I wouldn't say all film, because again, I mentioned that previous film that I saw at the Little, but a lot of the blockbuster hits are moving towards, and have been for decades now, action-packed, tell you what you want to believe, tell you what you should believe, tell you what you should think, kind of lacking in the depth that some of these earlier films had. I remember reading something, it was written in the 60s, I believe by a man named Walter Benjamin, neo-Marxist, and he mentions how film back then in the 60s was moving towards this like action, action, action all the time, and no stopping, no stopping for thought, stopping to look at the scene itself or the picture itself. And that's something, I read that and I remember that influencing me a lot because I thought, wow, it's moving even further in that direction now with the amount of digital technology that we have with CGI. I feel that there is a removal of certain physical aspects of film, not only with CGI, but obviously the digital format. And as for preservation efforts, I think it's cheaper to preserve these films in ways that you're just saving it on a digital hard drive and able to distribute it accordingly. But I think that with that, the digital age, as much as you have this digital copy, or you can make as many copies as you want, you're depending on the digital age to exist for forever. So to me, I have certain doubts that, maybe these physical forms, these physical prints that we have in our archives could last longer depending on how the digital world lasts, really. So there is that whole possibility of, losing all digital information. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind as time goes on, that there is a possibility that digital doesn't last forever. So, yeah.
What is your opinion on viewing films via smartphone or tablet? Do you believe this is an inferior/denigrating way to view a film? If so, what do you believe is the best way to view or experience a film?
I definitely don't prefer watching films on tablets or my computer, laptop. I honestly don't even watch that many films on my own, period, just from working here and having the few theaters that we have in Rochester to see films. I definitely think that how should I put it, degrades the quality of the experience. I have in the past had a Netflix account and I've watched many films on there, and I felt at a point that almost all the films that I was watching, because they were so accessible, you could watch them back to back to back, they were almost like becoming how do I explain it? Mixed up in my head almost, like too much, like information overload, where you couldn't really think of like the time that you went and sat and watched that film and what it related to in your life. I almost feel like having digital information or Netflix or Hulu creates that ability to, yes, watch as much as you want, but you definitely, it can create like the information overload, kind of how the internet in general maybe does with information. But yeah, I think seeing something, you can't match seeing something on the big screen, and I don't think you can match, obviously, again, seeing the actual film prints, hearing the projectors in the background, and the kind of fuzzy graininess to the screen, and just the sound itself. I don't necessarily think that the digital world can quite compete with what theaters offer, even if you're comparing it to major theaters like the Lowe's or AMC, anything like that. I think still has a special experience compared to just watching something on Netflix. But again, the accessibility is a good thing. It is good that more people are able to see more things, but I don't know necessarily if I wouldn't prefer it to seeing something on the big screen.
What are your thoughts on Blu-rays and DVDs? How are these home viewing formats improvements over previous home viewing formats, and where could or should they be improved?
Well, I will admit I am a big VHS collector.
Yes!
I've tried to hold back in recent months, but I'll grab I have multiple copies of things. Anything that I have slight interest in, I'll grab. But I'm not against DVDs, Blu-rays at all. I understand that they do have definite improvements to the VHS. I have an old tube TV. I just like that feeling. But that's just a personal preference. I definitely think DVDs, Blu-rays do improve upon the quality of the films and sound of films as well. I think that I'm not totally against the sales of them or the creation of them by any means. Again, I would say I would prefer to see a film in the theater over a DVD or Blu-ray, but I would prefer a DVD or Blu-ray over a Netflix account or Hulu account. Maybe because of my whole fascination with the physical form of something. At least they're providing that physical form. And I like going to the library and taking out movies and stuff like that. So once in a while I'll do that. I also did previously work in media record stores before this job, so I understand the sales of them, and I appreciate people that actually do still buy movies, because obviously, again, with Netflix, Hulu, that's even becoming a rarity, or more of a rarity, so yeah.
How's your job in general, just say, working here, evolved since its incarnation? Theater manager. What aspects of its evolution have you witnessed?
Well, I technically just became theater manager as of like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But I worked in the box office for probably around 3.5 years, so I've had that experience, and the changes that I've seen since then, I would say, honestly, even in the past 3.5 years, less younger people are coming in than older. I know that's kind of general, but it seems that our audiences are of the 55 plus on a regular basis. And when I started, that wasn't quite the case. It was moving towards that, but it wasn't quite the case. And I think if you go back further, maybe 5 to 10 years, you would find that more people between even children to 30s, 40s would be coming in more often. Reasoning behind that, I'm not totally certain, but I mean, obvious reasoning would be that the people that were younger are getting older, and then that's that. But I know that we at George Eastman are working to try and improve upon that, and show more screenings that are interesting to both young and old. And I think with the upcoming films like Eraserhead, for example, that will hopefully bring out that cult following. Clockwork Orange we have coming up again. I find that usually those are the types of films that bring out more people. Unfortunately, the silent films, barely anyone younger really comes to them, and I always am trying to recommend it to my friends who are all musicians, so they'd appreciate the silent piano accompaniment. But yeah, as for currently, unfortunately, the audience tends to be, I shouldn't say unfortunately, the audience tends to be segregated to a little older, and obviously for the Dryden to continue to exist, we need younger people to come in as well, so. Yeah.
You heard her. Come. Alright. Question 7, last one. What steps can film fans take to help preserve cinematic history? I think you kind of answered that already.
Yeah. Come out to the local theaters and put down your smartphone tablets. Once in a while, I'm not saying never use them, but, you know, take a look at something that existed long ago. Maybe it would be a little more interesting, and shed some light on history.
Cool. Well, thank you for allowing us to interview you.
Thank you very much.